Hi, you're listening to Playing Out from the Bar. Please be aware this podcast contains strong language. Right, can I go now?
Hello listeners and welcome to Playing Out from the Bar, our first episode tonight. Joining me, Jack Lacey, in the bar, and for this episode, and I hope every episode, are my good mates, Lewis Dawson and Lewis Tricey. Dobby, Tricey, we've got our drinks. How are we this evening, boys?
Yeah, I'm good. Cheers, Jack. So this is Lewis Dawson speaking, and yeah, not too bad. We've been chatting about this for a while, so it's kind of good to just get it underway now, and been looking forward to tonight really to give this a crack. But no, it's doing all right. It's been a good day, so nice weather. Now got a beer and chat a bit of football.
Yeah, good stuff. Tricey, you all right?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Happy to be here, and it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? We've had a lot of WhatsApp group chat since about this time last year, probably, but we're finally making a start of it, and who knows what it's going to be. It's going to be a bit of a shambles, I think, but we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the listeners who off air, we did have a bit of a struggle with technical issues, but we seem to we've managed just to get to the point of recording is a good step for us. I mean, it's been a long time coming, this bar, really, hasn't it? Originally, we looked at opening way earlier this year. Then we got hit with a pandemic, so we've had to wait a while. But I mean, I should say as well, we're in the virtual bar tonight at least. But before, do either of you want to explain what we think this series is going to be about? Or?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll give my opinion first, and then Tricey can jump in as well. But I don't know. I think over the last since turning the age of 18 and being able to go sit in the pubs and start drinking pints, we've always kind of got 4 or 5 pints in and engaged in them football discussions where you end up debating or getting into in-depth discussions on all sorts of football niches and just typical football chat, really, whether it's away days or Football League legends, or that Middlesbrough like UEFA Cup run, and I think when we chatted about potentially doing a podcast, now that we're all kind of separated a little bit more, different areas of the country, it did feel like a good way that we could kind of continue them discussions, either like in person or virtually, but then also put a bit of use to it as well and put it into a podcast to see how it comes out.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate description of what we're going to be doing over the next sort of few months or however long we go for. Tricey, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, and I think for me as well, mate. It's like we all live all over the country now, so we've had chats in our hometown, Scunthorpe, of many football scenarios, different things and stuff like that. But we don't really get to do it as much now, so I think. We have different responsibilities, work commitments and stuff like that. For context, we're not 18 anymore, are we? So it's nice to, it's nice to do this, albeit virtually at the minute. Hopefully we can sort of, it can lead to us seeing a bit more of each other and having a laugh at the same time.
Yeah.
I think as well, just to build on that, I think like we all said as well, there's a lot of podcasts that we all love, and I think like everybody, as years go on, the more podcasts are out there and the more you start listening to. But we did feel that maybe we could find that little bit of a gap there in the market where it's just that quite general, off the cuff. As we say, you'll hear us relating it to like the pub chat, really, just the things that you chat to your mates, not really anything too scripted or following the events of the football world as it unfolds. Just more of just general topics of discussions, either past or present.
Yeah, and we should say as well, just as a sort of preempt, that we do have an extensive list that between the three of us we've all contributed to over the past few months, a list of potential topics to discuss on the podcast over the next few months. So I'd say we're definitely not short of material, whatever road we go down. But yeah, before every episode, we sort of need to sort out our tactical setup. We know we're going to be playing out from the bar, but the important question is, what are we drinking tonight, lads?
So, funnily enough, we did actually say the other day, didn't we, that we'll have a bit of a chat about what we're drinking, and I thought, right, I'll make sure I'm prepared, and I've got stuff in, and I'll have like something quite like new and something interesting to share. And then I completely forgot about that. So about half an hour ago, I just had to look what was in the fridge. So I've literally dragged out a Cobra that someone's left here from some drink like last weekend before we headed out for some food. So I'm kind of just working off like what people have like left me in the fridge. So yeah, but I've got a Cobra that was gifted, but I left here basically. It's all right, but I was hoping for something a little bit more exciting, and adventurous, to be honest.
I think our first drink from the bar, and it's probably going to be the cheapest drink we ever have over the course of the series, the cheapest round.
I think this is the first Cobra I've ever had like at home.
Without a curry.
I don't think I've ever had a Cobra without a curry. So, but yeah, I guess it is something new. So I'll let you know how it goes down.
Tricey, what are we on?
So during the pandemic, like most people in the world, referred to my local brewery for a home delivery. So I did originally start getting, I got trainers delivered originally, but I did about 3 or 4 runs, and then I turned to the beer deliveries. So I'm on a Northern Whisper German beer. So yeah, local Lancashire brewery, and I think you get about 20 or something like that, and I'm getting through them at the minute. So
support the local. That's what it's all about.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm spending too much time on Zoom and stuff with you two, so I need to have
need something to get through it. For the record, I'm on. It's called Hugs and Kisses, which is a beer from Beer 52, which you may hear a lot of on a range of other podcasts. But I should say, for the record, they aren't sponsoring us yet. So if it is if it is terrible, I will 100% be slagging it off later on as we go into the night, later on in the bar. But yeah, we'll move.
Deliveries are available.
Yeah, we should say that. Yeah, if you're going to support anyone, go for your local beer delivery, because I've had a few swigs of it already, and it's it's okay, but it's not.
We don't want to rule out any sponsorship. I'm thinking 3 months down the line, if when a Beer 52 gets their hands on this episode, we might rule ourselves out.
We just got to avoid them, any employee from Beer 52 ever listening to this episode, and then we'll still have a chance. But yeah, I'll move on to sort of, before we get into our football nonsense. We've got plenty to be talking about tonight. But I think we're going to start every episode equally, not only by getting our drinks from the bar, but also something we plan on, a little regular feature. We think mental health, particularly at our age, is very important, and sort of a simple thing to do just by checking in on your mates, just to see how they are. So we thought, as a group, we'd each sort of provide one good and one bad thing from our week previously. Does anyone want to kick us off this week, boys?
Yeah, I'll go first, mate. So I think the bad thing, obviously, the ongoing coronavirus pandemic is a negative for everyone, but now we're starting to realise the financial implications of that, with questions of redundancy and stuff like that of people's jobs, and specifically at my work in the sports travel industry. So it's a bit nerve-wracking, but everyone's in the same boat, really, I guess, until there's a vaccine or some positive thinking from it, really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get too down about that. That's just part of the parcel of the times, unfortunately, at the minute. But just flipping that on its head, working from home the past 6 months or so, I've got to spend almost every day with Alfie, my little boy, which I wouldn't have done previously. Spent loads more time with him, and just like from this week, nice weather, 25 degrees. It's been absolutely brilliant. You can't really put a price on him playing in the garden and stuff like that. So that's without doubt my positive. And with what's going on, you realise what's important to you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's definitely, that's the best way to look at it, mate. I think, try and take in the positive side of it out. Dobby, have you got anything you want to share?
Yeah, so I've been off work this week on holiday, and it's been actually quite a nice week just to kind of zone out from work and distress a bit. And we actually went over to Whitby yesterday, so the seaside town Whitby, in the north of England. We went over there to visit and met up with my grandparents who travelled up from Scunthorpe. So we travelled from Leeds, they travelled from Scunthorpe. And we met there and we just had an afternoon together, and that was a really nice afternoon. Really. I mean, like I said, it's been quite a relaxed week, but I think spending time with your family and especially like your grandparents who don't get to see an awful lot of nowadays, it does really. It makes everything else kind of seem quite. I don't know, like it puts your mind at ease really, and it's like the simple things that you can enjoy. So I think sometimes you underestimate just how nice them things can be. So I thought it was a really nice afternoon, and when we got back yesterday, it was really good to see them. And then negative, it's been a tough one because, as I say, it's been very much like a zone out week. But I think this last couple of days, I've got really not conscious, but a little bit conscious about eating habits. So I think it's mainly to do with like the whole lockdown, and also this eat out to help out, which is a great incentive and been making the most of. But I think that's since lockdown's been easing a bit, been eating out a bit more and drinking out a bit more, and it's just feeling like I hit a bit of a bad eating habit. And I think yesterday I got to a point where I was a bit like, I need to break out of this now and start making a bit more of an effort to be eating better, like at lunchtime and dinner time. So nothing too major, but it's just one of them things that's been on my mind.
Yeah, I think everyone's been going a bit that way sort of over the lockdown. I think it's just a natural thing really. You can't really do much about it. Mine's sort of a similar, it's sort of both the same, the good and the bad. But I told you both off air the other day that I went to Sheffield at the weekend for sort of a bit of a day session, a bit of a sort of go around the bars, and it sort of had a bit of an odd atmosphere, obviously, because things aren't back to normal yet. We're still very much, everything feels a bit like you're going out with a handbrake on. And on my bad point of that, it was I had a great day, but the only bad thing was on the way there, I somehow messed up on Google Maps my destination of where I was meant to be driving to, my friend's flat where I was meant to be driving to. And I mean, this sounds like not a bad thing at all in the grand scheme of what you two have just mentioned, but I completely got lost around Sheffield city centre, like had no idea where I was going, and ended up just driving on what felt like a one-way system, and ended up just getting drove into John Lewis car park without anywhere else to go. And I was sat there like furious with myself for messing up the sat nav side of things, and just like, oh, why? It's my first weekend out in months since before the lockdown, in like 5 months, whatever, and I've ruined it by parking in this by not going where I'm supposed to be. And it's like that sort of 5-minute meltdown, but then anyway, recovered very quickly and had a great week after.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It does seem almost like that does sound like daft, but then the amount of times I've been driving to like a city that, like Manchester, for example, I remember going there about a year or two ago and driving over to stay at my friend's. And I think my sat nav in my car was obviously outdated, and Manchester had like introduced a load of new one-way roads since then, and roads that didn't exist. And like what was an upbeat journey, the last 15 minutes of it was just like a major level of stress. Just my sat nav telling me to go down roads that didn't exist in a city that I've never really driven around before, and it's just. You really do lose your head a little bit. So I can definitely get on board with that. I know how you feel.
Thanks. It perhaps pales into insignificance with the points you've raised, but yeah, it was kind of that thing of like, it doesn't really matter in the end, and it sort of, when you're in the right place half an hour later with a beer in your hand, things feel a bit better anyway. But it was just one of those things. Yeah, I enjoyed that. That sort of had like hallmarks of match of the day, too good, too bad. We should say as well, another regular feature. Well, we think it'll be a regular feature. I suppose we are just starting out, but we're going to be each episode sort of having a little social media corner. Whenever we play out from the bar, we're always going to try and bring something we liked, either on Twitter or Facebook or whatever from that week, and bring it to the corner. And this came to my attention from a couple of days ago. Now, I don't know if I've shown you two this already, boys, but as listeners will soon find out, we at this podcast, we're big fans of the Jackson Martinez age debate that two Arsenal fans had a few years ago. If you've not seen it, if any listeners have not seen it, please do check it out. It's better known as 28 versus 29. And I'm sure one week we'll dig into that in a bit more detail. But for this,
resurfaced again.
This is what I've found this week, right? I think the natural successor has come along to 28 versus 29. And it comes from an unlikely source, a debate between two of Lord Sugar's followers on Twitter. So Lord Sugar's original tweet was, rumour, Man City to bid 200 million for Harry Kane. Now, one of his followers has responded with, he isn't worth that, 75 million at most. Fairly standard football chat so far. But then someone else has come in the replies with, he's worth whatever Spurs say he is, given the length of his contract. Someone else has then responded with, that's not how it works. I want 2.6 million for my toaster, but it doesn't mean it's worth that. The original tweeter has responded with, that's exactly how it works. If I want to buy your toaster, I have to pay you what you want to get it. He's then come back with, no, that's how much he's for sale, not the worth. You'd go and buy a different toaster somewhere else that does the same thing for better value. Sorry, I'm nearly there now. The response is, but I really only want your toaster. It's up to me. It's not up to me to decide if it's worth the 2.6 million or not. And that was the interaction. So I mean, what do you think, lads? Is the toaster worth 2.6 million or not?
I'd seen that.
A two berth, a four berth? You know.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, we need more details on the toaster.
See through.
I'd seen this earlier the week. Actually, I was even going to potentially mention it myself. But yeah, it's definitely up there with Jackson Martinez one. I don't think I'll ever beat the original. But,
No, what's a bit of a downer to this one, Dobby, is that they're both actual Twitter users with photos of themselves. Really, for the comical edge, you need someone to have like a football badge or a
I think
meme.
it's ranked third in them conversations behind the Jackson Martinez one, and then the Lions versus the Sun Twitter debate as well. In the Twitter debate.
I just want to know who does set the value? Like, what is value? And yeah, like you say, we never got to see the toaster. Does he think anyone's going to pay 2.6 million for his toaster? I mean, these are all unanswered questions. But yeah, we'll take a rain check on that and try and come up with something similar next week. We're going to chat first this week about, as it's our debut episode on Playing Out from the Bar, we're going to talk about football debuts. So
the thing is with debuts, though, they're always a bit overhyped, aren't they? And really, there's too much pressure on the new signing. He's been going through Jim White's had him on deadline day and stuff like that. There's always a bit of definitely for a player making his debut at a top six club, but I prefer the era of you not knowing what you're going to get when you sign a player. So like the debut becomes the first time you see him. You haven't seen him on YouTube before. You haven't seen him on La Liga highlights on Sky 4 or something. It's a surprise package, and I think that's what I like about it. Obviously, debut's gone by. The one that sticks out in my mind, because it's a unanimous stinker, is Jonathan Woodgate, and I know he's a long family friend of his, so I'll be nice. His debut at Real Madrid was horrific, bless him. I mean, I think what annoys me about it though is people remember Jonathan Woodgate for getting sent off and scoring an own goal on his debut for Real Madrid, but the guy's playing for Real Madrid in the first place. Like, cut the man some slack. So, and out of context as well. So, like, he was injured obviously Jonathan Woodgate was injured. So he was injured for 4 months before he signed for Real Madrid, and then 13 months while he was actually at Real Madrid. So he hadn't kicked a ball in 17 months and is thrown in when Sergio Ramos can't play. And you just think, I watched the footage earlier. His own goal, you just think, Jonathan, he's got to go through to Casillas to put his hat over it. It's not going to go anywhere. but he wants to be Braveheart and dives at it. But then, the sending off seemed harsh. He was already on a booking, but then pulls a man down on the halfway line. But although it's regarded as a stinker, Real Madrid actually won the game, so it can't be too bad. But one of the debuts that also sticks in my mind is sort of, a Scunthorpe United fan. We don't have many Italian players in our history. I can only think of one off the top of my head, and that was in 2006. We had Andrea Ferretti on loan from Cardiff, and I was at an age where I started to, I was big on my Italian football then, so I started to look at this guy and think, he actually looks like an Aldi or Lidl version of Christian Vieri at the time. He was quite tall, he had long hair coming off the bench. I thought, who is this guy? And just for context for the listeners, watching football at Glanford Park, yes, you see the right back and the left back hit it over the ground because it's not the biggest of grounds. But still to this day, I can count on a number of fingers, how many times I've seen...
Twice.
Yeah, how many times I've seen a professional striker hit a ball over that stand. And Andrea Ferretti, bless him, he came on really sharp, I think, and he cut in from the... his touches were all over the place. Even at like 14, however old I was then, this player's not cut out for English football. Like, the Cardiff chairman said we're sending him to Scunthorpe to roughen him up, and hopefully he gets beat up a few times too. That's a direct quote. But he was awful, bless him. But, you don't want that, and that just sticks in my memory as a young kid growing up, that a professional footballer can be that bad at kicking a ball at a goal from 20 yards that it actually clears the stand. He only made 4 appearances for us in his short loan spell and sent back to Cardiff. And then he sort of became, a Serie C and Serie D journeyman. So, his career didn't have the career he was anticipating as a 19-year-old making his way in English football. And then
I think that's funny though, just while you're on that one, I think anybody who does listen, who follows maybe like a League One or a League Two side, or a team that's had some time down there, especially in the early 2000s, like that period when you don't have much access to the internet, and whenever an overseas, I know this chap came from Cardiff, whenever an international player, an overseas player comes in, it is just that, who on earth like found him, who on earth convinced him to come to Scunthorpe or Walsall or like Rochdale, like how has this even happened? And it's just, and what's he going to be like? And it's usually this one international player surrounded by 10 local lads almost, who will just play maybe 1 hour down the motorway at maximum. So yeah, I know what you mean. It's always interesting, and I think just to add to that, funnily enough, when I'm being from Scunthorpe as well. Growing up, there was obviously, like Alex Calvo Garcia, so the Spanish player who played for Scunthorpe for 10 years, and very much that player that I just explained. And he actually lived across the road from me on his own in a bungalow, just on like a normal housing estate in Scunthorpe. And like looking back now, I just think how on earth this Spanish player ended up in Scunthorpe living in this bungalow? Like, it must have just been so bizarre for him as well, coming over and making that move. But yeah, it is.
I
know what you mean.
the only thing I wanted to ask Trice was why the hell was Billy Sharp getting substituted for him in the first place?
It was for context, it was towards the end of the game. And I don't know if it was his actual debut, but it was his home debut.
Yeah.
So it's obviously first time in front of the thousands and thousands that we get at Glasgow Park. Yeah, it was the last few minutes, and I just remember this trampoline of a first touch going all over the place. It sort of made me think, like, God, if he's doing that, then, you know, there's hope for every...
Yeah.
Brilliant. Just on the sort of like the rogueness thing, I think possibly the greatest debut ever is Ali Dia or Dyer, whatever his pronunciation is. Is it Dyer? Dia?
I feel like it's Dyer according to Sky Sports, but maybe it wasn't Dyer originally. Maybe it was Dia.
So, I mean, I was watching the videos earlier of what Sky Sports were doing through lockdown, and they had, Matt Le Tissier and Souness talking about this. And Graham Souness is adamant that Southampton weren't conned in this. Graham Souness's point of view was that they were desperate. This lad came, and apparently they didn't have enough players for an 8v8 or something, Souness said. And, he wasn't great in training, but the reserve game got called off, and all of a sudden he's on the bench playing Leeds United, and Matt Le Tissier gets injured after 20 minutes. There's no, Graham, you've been conned, because effectively he got one of his mates who was a student to ring up and say, I've got George Weah's cousin who's been scoring goals in France, he's played 13 times for his country, he wants to move in England. But, the internet days have killed that now, because...
Yeah.
But I feel equally, Trust, we've all, obviously, when we've been at university, we've probably all had that conversation, like when you're bored in a library session, you're like, oh, should we just do some pranks? We try and call up and get you a game at the local club. I mean, he's just taking it on to the next level, going for Southampton, but...
Yeah, a few supplementary questions there. One, how has he got Souness's number?
Yeah.
And how has it been transferred? Do you ring Southampton? Is he on a direct line?
Yeah, that is true. What if the club secretary picks up? Does she then have the authority to say, "Yeah, get yourself down here"?
I think he rang a ticket office and he just got directed for. Just went through a few other people and got through to Graham. But it's funny though, because I looked at this one as well when we said we were going to discuss this, and it also managed to contact Harry Redknapp and Tony Pulis as well. But I think them two managed to see through it a bit, and I think Harry Redknapp was like, "Nah, they're having me on. So, this is ridiculous." But obviously Graham Souness Graham Souness was a little bit more optimistic with them too.
It makes me laugh that Graham Souness can sort of plead desperation if he wants to, but he gets paid now to judge other managers on Sky Sports. So that was.
It's funny as well, because I think in one of the articles he says within 5 minutes, me and my coaches we know this guy can't play, and this is all ridiculous. But yet they still went and actually gave him a 1-month contract, I think, and then he tried to justify it out of we just kind of needed numbers, we don't have any attackers, and you just.
Yeah, it seems like Souness
is... It wasn't that long ago, was it?
He's rewriting. Yeah, he's rewriting history with this Souness. He knows he's messed up massively, and he's now trying to cover himself in the stories that come out after years later.
But early 2000s, late 90s, sorry, whenever it was, surely your youth team, your under 23s have got a few strikers or wingers that are worth putting on the bench, rather than just taking a punt on some guy who's rocked up at the training session. It just sounds absolutely mad.
That's a young striker, isn't it? Imagine that. You've been at Southampton since you were 8, you're 18, and you see all of a sudden the first team squad's, not got anyone in, they're struggling for numbers. You're thinking, I can play in the Premier League this weekend, and all of a sudden someone who's only played football a few months ago is given a Premier League debut.
Do either of you guys know who he played for before, and who he when he actually before he made the move? Did you
I know it was
for Blythe Spartans.
It was at uni in Northumbria, wasn't he? So playing for Blythe Spartans would have been you could see that happening. Players who are good at Northumbria uni will play non-league football in that area, but. So that explains it a little bit, but I still don't understand. Surely he's had a training session at Southampton, and they've then. How could they not work out at that point that he was clearly an amateur footballer? But so he went through this. He went through the session and then still played the game.
Well, that's what Souness was saying, because the numbers were so small. Letizier's quote was, "He thought he'd won a competition to train with."
And then I think he adds to it and he goes, "It must have been a pretty good competition because he was in the dressing room on the Saturday."
That is a brilliant quote. Oh, it must have been a good competition. I love that. There are so many unanswered questions with that story. It's hard to top, I think, as a worst debut, definitely.
Well, it's the bullshitter's dream, though, isn't it? It gives hope to anyone. Like you said, Jack, anyone sat in a university library. You've got too much work on. Pick up your phone and ring the Football League. Just go through, start A to Z. Go see who you can get a trial at.
I wonder, how long the three of us would have lasted in a Premier League game without being found out. How long did you say it took Souness to find out? 10. He knew after 5 minutes. Did he say?
He knew after 5 minutes in the training
in the game, apparently.
Oh right, 70 minutes in the get. So
he got subbed off later on.
I'd love to find out if I could just handle 70 minutes in the Premier League, not technically, obviously, but just physically. Would I still be able to move and just look a little bit like a footballer by that stage?
He did have a shot on target though, and it was a pretty good one, near post. There was a chance that that could have crept in.
I've got to see. I need to see that.
That would have been the topping on the absolute shocker of a signing, shocker of a debut, but still managed to get a goal.
It's fine margins because he'd have probably built a career at a much higher level if he'd have scored that goal.
Yeah,
if that shot goes in,
someone would have given him a go the next summer, wouldn't they?
Definitely.
He scored a goal. He's scored a goal. We'll bring him in. Watford would have had him. Something like that.
No, I agree. I'm with you completely. I feel like we got sidetracked there on Ali Dyer, Tricey, rightly or wrongly. But is that would you say he's he was first choice when you were searching for debuts?
Yeah, and alongside him, just because it's the ultimate sort of English boy story, Ricky Lambert's debut goal for England within 3 minutes of his debut against Scotland. I mean, it's sort of like Roy of the Rovers stuff, really, I guess. And I remember watching the game at the time, and England were awful against a mediocre Scotland team, and Ricky Lambert scoring all the goals, and especially you see him playing for Bristol Rovers, I think was it, and stuff like that, and he's banked goals in his career in the Football League, and then he's had a season in the Prem with Southampton, and rightly deserved his place at that time, seeing as though there was Rooney and Welbeck and no one else really pepping behind him. But yeah, just that debut, I mean, that's what everyone, if you love football, you like that goal type thing, unless you're Scottish.
It's like Roy of the Rovers story, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the guy coming on, bullet header, and turns out to be the winner as well. And, he did go on to make more apps for England, and he did get his dream move to Liverpool, but I think that was when he was already past it then. It seemed like it, this aging man type thing, scoring for England in what could have only been one of his only few appearances, was superb for me, that.
Yeah. And it was that comeback, wasn't it? They were 2-1 down, England, and then
that's the second result, isn't it, really, for Roy Hodgson, that losing 2-1 at Wembley to Scotland.
My only memory of that, it's a very niche thing to pick up on, but I remember that week was the week that I got my A-level results to get into university, and my granddad texted me saying, "Congratulations, Jack, you must be as over the moon as Ricky Lambert," which was just like a weird text to like read back. Like I think when you go through your text and you're deleting conversations months later, I just went through it and read like "You must be as happy as Ricky Lambert," and I thought, what's that reference for? And then I remember that he scored that. So that's my memory of that goal, which is not really relevant.
Maybe Ricky Lambert also got his A-level results on that day.
I'm going to keep that one in mind. So if anyone ever asks me, like, were you chuffed? Like, oh yeah, I was happy with Ricky.
It was just like, such a left field comment. And if you took that conversation on 3 years later, it would have made no sense, like culturally. But just for that week, Ricky Lambert was the big story in sport, English sport. That was a great debut actually. Should we? I can move on to. Should we go to your? We'll go to your debuts first if you want, Dobby.
Yeah, sure. So, funnily enough, I had the same one down as Tricey, the Ali Dyer debut. So I'll bypass that one. So I think another. Well, I don't think the debut. Well, yeah, it was a pretty bad debut to be honest. But I think the story behind it as well just makes it quite comical. So it's the Sol Campbell move to Notts County and the debut. And to be honest, I kind of forgot about this one a little bit. I was racking my brains trying to think of some infamous debuts, and then I just kind of remembered about this Notts County takeover back in, I think it was like around 09-10, where there was this supposed like Middle Eastern money coming in, and they'd appointed Sven as manager, and the press was coming out and saying that they were going to go out and sign a load of kind of like some of the all-time greats, really. So like Roberto Carlos, I think was linked. I think Figo maybe, and loads of like top European players who were probably like deep into the 30s by this point. And Sven's like, I've bought into this plan from the new ownership, and we're going to take this club to the Premier League, and we're going to get some real marquee signings. And I remember being quite young and thinking, heck, like Notts County in League Two, they're going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with. The first signing for Sven was Sol Campbell, and then Sol came in, and his statements, I had a look, and they basically read, I'm buying into this, and I've got the reassurance from the manager and the staff that we're going to be bringing in this caliber of players. So I'm very much in trying to get this club up the divisions. So I think at the time when he came in, he was actually injured as well. So he was injured, or it was quite late on in the pre-season, so he didn't make the start of the season. And actually, as the transfer market kind of was moving along, there was no other real marquee signings as well. So the only real League Two Galactico they brought in was Sol Campbell on his £40,000 a week wages on a 4-year deal. Apparently, I don't know how much truth this is, but I think he actually said it was the best like contract he'd ever signed. So I don't know if it was like the time period and the weekly wage. So it's pretty mental, really, isn't it? 40 grand a week in League Two, and I think that just shows really like how just the state of the football league and how easy it can be for clubs to just kind of fall into this position when things like that can happen. Anyway, so no one else really followed. The season starts. They've probably brought in, I can't really remember, but I think they had maybe like Matt Ritchie at the time, and I think they had a pretty solid squad for League Two. And at the start of the season, good. And however many games in September, Sol is fit, and he makes his debut away at Morecambe in a 2-1 defeat. And I didn't get a chance to watch any of the footage, or if there's any out there. But from what I've read, I think he just got taken by storm. But I think the kind of rough and ready style of League Two, he just really went up for it that game, and I think they conceded from maybe 2 set pieces as well. So it wasn't a great debut from him, and from what I've read, it was really quite. It wasn't a good performance by him himself either. Just very bizarre circumstances, a very bizarre debut, and then. I can't remember how many days it was afterwards, but he then terminated his contract and was gone within the next month, I think. So he played that one game.
Did he go back to Arsenal after that, or did he go?
He did, yeah. He did. He went back to Arsenal.
And he actually played a few games in the Champions League for him as well. I think that that season.
Did he score
eventually.
in the Nou Camp?
I think he scored somewhere. Yeah, I think he scored in an away European game months after quitting on Notts County. Essentially,
he definitely went back to Arsenal and actually played. But when he left Notts County, he came out and he basically had a bit of a tantrum after this game and laid blame to the training facilities and referencing the turf at the training ground being too hard, and just basically saying I can't work with this, and then just ripped up his contract. So yeah, it was a funny one really. That one appearance, it was his debut. It was his only game. It was a pretty bad performance, and it was a loss. And then he was out of there. And funnily enough, Notts County never went on to sign Roberto Carlos, and that was that. So it's a very bizarre period, really.
It's just that whole story of like Sven being there, but was Sven the manager, or was he technical director or something?
I think
so. Yeah, I think he's not even in charge of the players yet. He's kind of doing that manager thing of like, I'll sign him because I know him because he played well for me in the 2002 World Cup. Yeah. Therefore, he's going to be cutting it.
Sven would go anywhere for 20p. Like, look at the guy's Wikipedia managerial track record. I don't know for a fact, but I bet he's been to China. I bet Sven has been all over.
I think he was managing the Philippines at one point. Well, I don't know if that was his last job. I mean, he was national team manager of Philippines. So he's considering, he was England boss, 14 years ago. That's a bit.
Man loves money.
Yeah, he does. I think what's funny is this as well. Like, Sol Campbell obviously feels a bit hard done by about this whole move, and he don't blame himself. And he basically says like he's still not had an apology from Sven. So I'm guessing he means like an apology in the sense that like Sven sold him this like pipe dream that Notts County here on like League Two, but
going to be in the Premier League soon.
Yeah, and I think he feels that Sven still owes him a bit of an apology for this dream he's sold.
I don't know if. Do you think he'll ever get that apology? I can't see Sven as being the type of man who's like he just when you see him in a bar, he's forget about it. I'll get you a drink. Let's put put it to bed. I don't see. I think I'd see Sven holding a grudge, and I can see Sol Campbell definitely holding a grudge.
Am I thinking Sven got? Just while we're on Sven, I've sidetracked here, but did Sven get a media sting? Was he the fake?
Oh yeah, Sven? I think he got multiple media stings around affairs, and like Nancy Delolio was involved, and Eureka Johnson as well.
She got the run on the Big Brother.
Like he would sell, he would be able to sell Indian players and stuff like that.
Oh really? One of them?
Yeah, I think he must have been like at the time, like Piers Morgan's wet dream, I guess, at the time.
Right. Yeah. I thought you meant like personal life. Because I just remember his one of his ex, like, I don't know if it was his wife or like girlfriends, her appearance on Big Brother, just for like being Sven's ex.
Nancy, I think that was Nancy Delolio. I might be wrong.
I can't really remember. But I remember it just being because she'd been in like the news, like this whole thing with Sven having like affairs and stuff. So,
like, I always liked Sven as an England manager, but equally he is ripe for a bunging or a stinging. Like, it is no surprise that if an England manager was going to be done by the fake shake, that it would be Sven.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. So I'll go on to one of my next debuts then. I picked one that's actually like I think personal to me and one that I remember quite like. It's a weird one. At the time, I remember it fondly, and now I remember it a bit like bitterly in a way. But it was Luke Murphy's debut for Leeds. So I'm a Leeds United fan, and so we signed central midfielder Luke Murphy back in 2013. So this was the summer that GFH Capital, another Middle Eastern consortium that didn't have the money, basically bought the club off Ken Bates. So the 8 years prior to that, we'd been under Ken Bates, and no money had been spent, and all the best players had been sold, and there was such a promising side there with the likes of Robert Snodgrass, Jermaine Beckford, Johnny Howson, Bradley Johnson, Max Gradle, and you just kept seeing these players leave and no one coming in. And then eventually Ken Bates sells the club, and with the GFH come in. And I remember the first game of the season, being stood in the south stand, and they're doing a lap of the pitch and being like stood up, and you're applauding like your new saviours, this new like consortium that's come in and is going to change, like is going to take Leeds United back to where they belong, and within 5 years at the Premier League force again. And that summer we'd signed Luke Murphy, who was the first £1 million player we've had since the Premier League, Champions League days. So I remember that being like such a big thing. Like we signed a player for £1 million. Like we haven't paid seven figures for anybody for that long. And so it did feel like the good times are finally back. And now. So anyway, in the game, it's Brighton at home, and Luke Murphy actually goes on to score the 88th minute winner. So it's at that moment you're thinking like, brilliant, new owners, new central midfielder is come in and scored on his debut, and everything looks great. And then kind of as the season progressed, Luke Murphy turned out to be bang average, and we finished 15th. So yeah, I just remember that debut just because the amount of optimism I had. And how like excited we were as a fan base that we'd have these new owners and we'd actually sign someone for a bit of money for once rather than selling players. And I remember the car journey home after that game and just thinking, yeah, this season we're sorted, we're going up. And then 8 months later, it's just same old story. And I think Luke Murphy stayed at the club for a while, to be fair to him, but he never really did much. But yeah, that's just one I remember.
So it's kind of it's more of a decent debut, but just it sort of builds up the expectation rather than like, you know, what a sign of things that was to come.
Yeah, I think it just really summarises Leeds United of that period, really. I like I say, the start of the match, the new owners paraded themselves around the pitch, and it's again one of these Middle Eastern consortiums who come in and promise you the world. And that was their statement signing. And in hindsight, it was not a lot of money, and it wasn't from a rival club. It was from a League One club who had signed him. So I think it's the hope that kills you, isn't it? It was yeah. But very Leeds United-esque, that signing. So that was one that just always sticks in my mind. So I just thought I'd put that one out there.
I think it's that period though, Dobby, of sometimes when you're selling your best players. I remember when Newcastle did this. When you're selling your best players and your team is clearly sort of been disintegrated, the team that was before, and you kind of, as fans, you don't want to admit that is what's happening. So instead, you're just like, well, we're signing so and so. Like it was just clearly not the same standard of player. So it's like, you know, it was like. I'm trying to think of an example for Newcastle, but it's like we've had it plenty of times over the years. It's like, well, we've sold Gino Van Alderman, we've been relegated, but we're signing Matt Ritchie. You know, for example, who's a fine player, but it's like it's clearly a step down. It's kind of that sort of era, isn't it?
It is that, like you do try and justify everything to yourself, and like you defend your club there, and you're like it. You know they're making it that things are really going quite badly, but you do have that hope, and you do think there's something good to come from this. And I remember even playing back at uni, actually playing FIFA and with Leeds, and Luke Murphy would be on the bottom. Oh, Luke Murphy, like £1 million player. That's how bad things got for Leeds fans. It's the case of I would just sign someone for seven figures.
Oh man, that's brilliant.
I think it's funny with debuts how like everyone remembers when they're a stinker, and everyone remembers when they've seen like a great debut. But sometimes, like, it's too much too soon. So, like, there's no shame in your first appearance for a new club or doing something new, i.e. this podcast for the first time. You know, let's aim for a 6 out of 10.
Be solid.
Surprise the fans, you know, in December with a really good performance. Don't give it to them straight away, because it's only a downward hill from there.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. That Trice.
Like just on I know I touched on Woodgate. Like everyone remembers his debut for Real Madrid, but that sort of defines his career. It's bizarre.
Definitely. Yeah, it shouldn't be the case, really. I'll to sort of round off the debuts chat. I'll pitch an awful debut I've selected of my own. Most people would agree it wasn't the player in question's fault that this turned out to be an awful debut. But anyway, I'm going for Warren Barton's England debut. So for those that don't know, Warren Barton was a pretty excellent right back for Newcastle's mid-90s team that challenged for the league. He probably played 29-30 games a season for that team. A little unlucky to play in the same era as Gary Neville, who was just sort of coming up to his peak. Today, if there was a right back playing every week for a team finishing second in the league, he'd have a stake for an England call up, certainly. He finally gets the call up in February 1995, and you think, yes, this is it. This is his big chance. This is Warren's chance to stake a claim for a Euro 96 squad place. He's given a start. Terry Venables starts him at right back, so big opportunity. Nail down your place before the Euros. England are playing Republic of Ireland in this game away in the mid-90s. Ireland were managed by Jack Charlton. After just 22 minutes, David Kelly scores for Ireland, and this leads to some rioting, quite bad, severe rioting from the more hostile section of England's away support. And just 4 minutes later, the game is abandoned completely. So, when I say the game ended in a riot, it's not an exaggeration. That literally happened, and I didn't get to see the footage, so I don't know if he himself was at fault for the goal. But even if he's not, I feel like this is the most unlucky debut in the history of football. Imagine waiting your whole life to play for your country, and then the game gets abandoned after 26 minutes. I just don't think it can get much worse than that, really.
Well, that's a good one, actually. Yeah.
Did he go on to make England apps, Jack? Or?
I'm glad you asked me this, Troy. So he played twice more. Once was a 88th minute substitute appearance against Sweden. Sweden immediately scored, and he came on in the 93rd minute of a game at Wembley against Brazil, which was literally a substitution where they were just killing time. So he ended his England career with 3 caps, but a total of about...
That's 3 more caps than anyone else has got.
Yeah,
there's a lot of English football.
But a total of about 30 minutes on the pitch, or less. So, yeah, I just feel for Warren Barton. Sometimes I just think, you're right, we talk about all these one-cap wonders who, score a goal or set up a goal, and they go down in history for it. But imagine, he's had the most unlucky debut possible there. So that's my selection.
I think that does
just
fall
on
into the
England
category
debuts.
Really unlucky.
Go on, Dobby, sorry.
I was going to say, no, I can't think that definitely falls into the category of ridiculously unlucky. I think the only ones that'll top that have career, serious injuries that have really altered someone's career, like any leg breaks. But I think other than that, he's got a horrendous debut there, hasn't he?
I can't believe none of us have mentioned this yet, and you've just jogged my memory there, Jack. David Nugent's 1 cap and 1 goal for England against Andorra. What a debut!
Yeah. Smashed it in from all of a yard.
I can see why Jermaine Defoe's pissed off, but if I was David Nugent, I'd be doing the same, and I'd be dining out on that for the next however many years. It's just a P-roller, 1 yard out. Thank you very much. 1 cap, 1 goal. Next.
I forgot about that.
I agree. I agree.
I've not mentioned it.
I agree with you that I'm the same as you. I probably do it, but then I'm also thinking, is the years of being able to say that afterwards, is it worth it for how awkward the dressing room is for half an hour after that game and the bus ride home?
Anyway, didn't we, that England team? So I mean, it would have.
But exactly, but that's it. Jermaine Defoe's a senior player. Surely, the senior players just look at Nugent and think, "What the fuck, man? That is never step foot in this changing room again." But that's a good one.
So everyone's a winner.
I think we could probably actually put together an episode on these England strikers who have had a short stint in the side, the likes of David Nugent. So I was just thinking then, even do you remember Jay Bothroyd when he got his breakthrough to the England side? How many appearances did he go on to make?
I think that was he was another one cap wonder, I reckon.
I believe, yeah.
Was it? He didn't get a goal though, did he?
I think him and Andy Carroll made the debut in the same game. That was England's strike force for a friendly against France.
Really?
It was Andy Carroll and Jay Bothroyd. And like they were barely at, like, one was just out the championship and one was in the championship.
To say that Fabio Capello's won so much, and at the time he was just looking for someone to play a big striker up front with Rooney. You just think, like, Jesus Christ, Fabio, just get an extra guy in midfield. Like, I'm sure he had enough quality at that time. Wayne is fine up there by himself. He doesn't need to be chasing flick-ons from, Jay Bothroyd or whoever.
Yeah,
I think Kev Davis was capped at that time, but he's a bit of a legend, so I'm not gonna slag Kev off.
Well, we promised a shambles, and I'm delighted to say we have delivered on that promise. That night we were in the bar way beyond closing time, so episode 1 has had to be split up into a 2-parter. Part 2 will be released in a few days' time. To play us out on our debut on Playing Out from the Bar, a fitting tribute to a hero from this week's episode. This is the Ballad of Ali Dyer. Thanks for listening.
If George Weah rang a Premier League club to recommend me, would I not be happy? If David Ginola rang to second George Weah's words, would I not be happy? And if the legendary Graham Souness asked me to the club, would I refuse? From Blythe Spartans reserves to the Premier League, would I refuse? Still they say Ali Dyer is a liar, is a liar. Ali Dyer is a liar, is a liar. Ali Dyer is a liar, is a liar. Ali Dyer, pants on fire. If a man called my office and said he was George Weah, would I not believe him? And if David Ginola called to confirm George Weah's words, would I not trust him? And if they told me they'd found a Liberian prodigy, would I not sign him? And if that prodigy turned up on a Friday morning, should I not play him? Still they say Ali Dyer is a liar, is a liar. Ali Dyer is a liar, is a liar. Ali Dyer, no liar, no liar. Ali Dyer, no liar.